Welcome back to the channel. Fame may look glamorous, but for many young Black R&B stars, it came with battles the world never saw. At the height of their brilliance, when their voices lit up the industry, they were silently fighting something far more dangerous than the pressures of success. A deadly illness, creeping behind the spotlight, claiming their energy, their bodies, and eventually, their lives. Behind every chart-topping hit was a private war, a pain buried beneath perfectly staged smiles and unforgettable performances. And when these young voices were silenced far too soon, their deaths became more than headlines. They became warnings. Reminders of how fragile life truly is, and how unforgiving the road to fame can be. The stories you're about to hear are heartbreaking, powerful, and impossible to forget. Prepare yourself. This is the side of R&B the world rarely talks about. Minnie Riperton, the woman with the superhuman voice who fought death with every breath she had. Minnie Riperton wasn't just a singer, she was a marvel. Her angelic, sky-high notes most people couldn't even dream of reaching, made her a global sensation. Lovin' You didn't just make her famous, it turned her into a cultural monument, a Black woman who pushed the boundaries of music farther than anyone believed possible. But behind the applause, Minnie was fighting a war she never asked for. In 1976, at just 29 years old, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, a quiet, merciless sentence. She made the heartbreaking decision to undergo a mastectomy on her left breast, a painful sacrifice at a time when she was at the height of her beauty, her career, and her power. For a moment, it seemed like hope. But the cancer had already slipped through her body like a shadow. It crept into her liver, then into other organs. Soft, invisible destruction that no one could see from the outside. Even as her body deteriorated, Minnie refused to surrender the stage. She smiled on national television, speaking about cancer as if it were just another challenge she'd overcome. But behind the curtain, the truth was brutal: endless chemotherapy sessions, nights of pain so intense she couldn't sleep, emergency trips to the hospital when her strength failed her. Still, she carried herself with grace, with dignity, with the poise of a queen who refused to let the world see her fear. By June of 1979, her body was nearly out of time. Minnie could barely stand. She was admitted to Cedars-Sinai, the hospital where so many Hollywood legends fought their final battles. And on July 12, 1979, in a room heavy with silence, Minnie Riperton took her last breath in her husband's arms. They said she passed peacefully. But her peace came only after one of the fiercest, most heartbreaking fights a soul could endure. She was just 31. Minnie Riperton wasn't simply a talent gone too soon. She was a brilliant, burning star slowly dimmed by cancer, a legendary voice straining against pain until the very end. Her legacy is not just in the notes she hit, but in the strength she showed when the world wasn't watching. Florence Ballard, the supreme who fell from glory and died alone. Florence Ballard wasn't just a member of the Supremes, she was their heartbeat. The founder. The fire. The explosive voice that carved the group's identity and sent Motown's most iconic girl trio to the top of the world. But all it took was one decision from the label, one quiet nod behind closed doors, and Florence's light was pushed out of the spotlight. When she left the Supremes in 1967, the fall was brutal. The woman once crowned a queen of Motown was suddenly drowning in debt, trapped in an abusive marriage, and numbing her nights with alcohol. The glamorous gowns and stage lights were gone. What remained were shadows, loneliness, heartbreak, and a growing sense that the world she helped build had forgotten her. Still, Florence fought. She dreamed of a comeback, of stepping back into the studio and reclaiming her voice. But every door stayed closed. Every plea for support was ignored. Her attempts at rising again were swallowed by silence. By 1975, her body began to fail her. Shortness of breath, swelling, rapid weight gain. Signs she couldn't afford to investigate. Doctors found severe heart problems, but long-term care was a luxury Florence no longer had. She was discharged back to her small, cold home in Detroit, a place that reflected everything her life had become: neglected, broken, and dim. On February 21, 1976, she collapsed from crushing chest pain. Panicked and exhausted, she was rushed to Harper Hospital. Doctors fought, but the years of suffering had already claimed her. On February 22nd, at only 32 years old, Florence Ballard died. The official cause, heart failure from coronary thrombosis, a death foretold by poverty, trauma, and a decade of being unseen. Florence Ballard was a legend, a powerhouse, a woman who helped define an era. But she died like a forgotten stranger, in a cold hospital room, after life squeezed every last breath from her. A star who helped the world shine, yet faded with no one by her side. Donny Hathaway wasn't just a singer, he was one of the purest musical souls to ever walk a stage. His voice wrapped itself around the world with A Song for You, Someday We'll All Be Free, and those unforgettable duets with Roberta Flack. He didn't perform music, he became it. But behind every note he sang, a silent war was raging inside him. On the freezing night of January 13, 1979, that battle reached its breaking point. Donny had just left a studio session where friends noticed something deeply unsettling. He was nervous, distracted, muttering about being watched, insisting someone was trying to hurt him. These weren't new fears. Donny had struggled with schizophrenia for years, a cruel disorder that twisted his reality and returned with brutal force whenever he missed his medication. After dinner, he went back to his 15th floor suite at the Essex House Hotel. Minutes later, his body was found on the sidewalk below. The window of his room stood wide open. No bars. No sign of a fight. No answers, only questions that tore through the music world. Why would a man in the middle of creating new work, a man still filled with brilliance, end his own life? What darkness cornered him so completely that he couldn't escape? Donny Hathaway's death shook the industry to its core. At just 33, one of soul music's greatest minds was gone, taken not by fame, not by scandal, but by a mind that betrayed him in the moment he needed help the most. His legacy is a reminder that even geniuses bleed in silence, and sometimes the world doesn't notice until it's far too late. Phyllis Hyman was more than a music icon. She was elegance, power, and pain wrapped in one unforgettable voice. On stage, she commanded the world. Her soaring vocals, regal beauty, and magnetic presence could silence a crowd in seconds. In black music, she wasn't just a diva, she was a symbol of grace, strength, and unmatched emotional depth. But behind the spotlight lived a different Phyllis. A woman exhausted. A woman unraveling. A woman sinking into a darkness she could no longer outrun. On June 30, 1995, just hours before she was set to perform at the legendary Apollo Theater, Phyllis disappeared from backstage preparations. Fans filled the seats, the lights warmed the stage, musicians tuned their instruments, but Phyllis never arrived. While the world waited for her to sing, she fought her final battle alone inside her small apartment in Stuyvesant Heights, New York. The room was quiet. The city outside kept moving. On her table, empty pill bottles, and a handwritten note. Final. Heartbreaking. Absolute. For years, she had battled bipolar disorder, crippling depression, and the kind of loneliness that eats a person from the inside out. Alcohol became both her comfort and her cage. Her illness bruised her spirit long before it ever touched her body. Friends found her collapsed and called for help, screaming her name, begging her to wake up. But by the time the ambulance arrived, her heart had already stopped. Death came quickly, cold, brutal, just as she had felt life had treated her. Phyllis Hyman's story ripped the mask off the glamour of show business. Behind the gowns and applause, there was no room for fear, no room for weakness, no room for a woman who needed help. She hid everything to keep her crown shining. But inside, she was simply tired. Tired of hurting. Tired of pretending. Tired of surviving. That night, the Apollo Theater dimmed its lights. The audience fell into stunned silence. And a brilliant star, one of the brightest of her generation, fell before she ever reached the stage. Dilla, the quiet genius who reshaped hip-hop, spent his final days creating masterpieces while his own body betrayed him. Born James DeWitt Yancy, he wasn't just a beatmaker. He was an architect of sound, a visionary whose off-kilter drums and soulful loops changed the DNA of modern music. His influence touched artists across the globe, Yet behind the brilliance was a man fighting a private, devastating war. By early 2006, that war was reaching its end. Dilla suffered from two rare, vicious illnesses, systemic lupus erythematosus and thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, conditions that attacked his organs, drained his strength, and left him in constant pain. His legs swelled, his energy collapsed, and his kidneys failed. Hospitals became his second home. Every day was a battle just to keep breathing. And still he worked. Too weak to stand, barely strong enough to lift his head, Dilla sat in his hospital bed crafting beats that would outlive him. With machines humming beside him, he completed Donuts, the album now hailed as a timeless masterpiece, just days before his death. It wasn't just music. It was his final heartbeat, looped and immortalized. On February 10, 2006, at only 32 years old, Dilla took his last breath inside his mother's Los Angeles home, the safest place he had left. His mother and closest friends described his final hours as a long, uneven fight. A body worn down, organs failing, but a spirit refusing to quit until the art was done. In the end, illness claimed him. But it never defeated him. Dilla left behind a legacy of boundless creativity, a blueprint for generations, and a heartbreaking reminder that sometimes the brightest brilliance comes at the highest cost. Tammi Terrell, the radiant soul who left the world far too soon. Her voice was sunshine, pure, sweet, and overflowing with life. Paired with Marvin Gaye, she created timeless Motown magic, songs that felt like love itself. She was young, gifted, and already rising among the greatest female voices of her era. But destiny had a cruel plan. In 1967, during a duet with Marvin Gaye, Tammi suddenly collapsed on stage. The world stopped. Doctors soon delivered the unthinkable, a malignant brain tumor, silently stealing her youth, her strength, and the brilliant future she was just beginning to claim. For the next 18 months, Tammi fought like a warrior. 8 surgeries. Endless pain. Headaches so severe they brought her to tears. Her vision dimmed day by day until darkness took over completely. By 1969, her body could no longer keep up with her spirit. She was forced to step away from music just as her star was brightest. But behind hospital walls, the battle grew even heavier. Tammi drifted in and out of comas, her family staying beside her as hope slipped through their fingers. She was only 24, still dreaming, still loving, still fighting. On March 16, 1970, Tammi Terrell took her final breath at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. A radiant angel of Motown was gone, her light extinguished far too early. Her death remains one of music's most heartbreaking tragedies. A voice meant to last forever, silenced in just a few short years. A star that should have shined for decades, taken in the cruelest way. Tammi Terrell's legacy isn't just in the songs she left behind. It's in the heartbreak of what the world lost. LaShawn Levert's final hours were nothing short of a tragedy that never should have happened. The son of Eddie Levert from the O'Jays and the younger brother of R&B powerhouse Gerald Levert, LaShawn carried a soulful voice that once lit up black music in the 80s and later as a solo artist. But the way his life ended still feels like an open wound. On March 30, 2008, just minutes after being removed from his cell at the Cuyahoga County Jail in Ohio, LaShawn Levert took his last breath at Lutheran Hospital. He had been arrested 6 days earlier over unpaid child support, a situation that should never have been a death sentence. But what killed him wasn't the charge. It was the brutal indifference inside that jail. LaShawn suffered from severe high blood pressure and depended on daily medication. Yet for nearly a week, his doses were inconsistent and then cut off entirely. Without those pills, his body began to spiral. He reported dizziness, chest pain, and waves of panic. He begged officers for help. He told them something was wrong. Again and again, they ignored him. By the time he collapsed in his cell, LaShawn's body was already shutting down. Doctors tried to save him, but it was too late. The stress, the untreated withdrawal, and the sheer neglect pushed his heart past its breaking point. He died of acute heart failure, just hours before he might have reunited with his family. LaShawn Levert's death wasn't just the loss of a gifted singer. It was a devastating reminder of a system that too often treats people as disposable. A man who was simply trying to get his life back on track was left to suffocate under the very watch of those meant to keep him alive. Dinah Washington didn't just sing jazz, she ruled it. Her voice was sharp enough to cut through an orchestra and tender enough to break your heart. With classics like What a Difference a Day Makes, she became a towering force in jazz, blues, and R&B, an American icon carved into music history. But behind the applause was a woman slowly collapsing under the weight of fame, pressure, and expectations no one could survive. On the night of December 14, 1963, tragedy struck. Her husband, NFL star Dick "Night Train" Lane, walked into their bedroom and found Dinah motionless, cold, still, and silent. Beside her lay an empty pill bottle. Hours earlier, she had taken barbiturates to sleep and chased them with vodka and wine to soothe her nerves. This time, her body simply couldn't fight its way back. Dinah had been living inside a storm long before that night. 7 marriages. Relentless career pressure. An obsession with weight and perfection that pushed her into starvation diets and handfuls of pills. She hid her exhaustion behind glamour, laughter, and flawless stage performances, but those closest to her knew she was running on fumes. Her weakened body, worn down by crash dieting, stress, and emotional strain, couldn't survive the deadly mix of alcohol and pills. She slipped away in her sleep. No final words. No last cry for help. Just silence. To some, her death wasn't a shock, but the speed and stillness of it shook the industry. Many believe that if she had received real mental health support, if the music world hadn't been so merciless, Dinah Washington might have lived long enough to witness the legacy she left behind. A legend, gone too soon. A voice the world loved, lost to the pressures that crushed the woman behind it. Otis Blackwell, the unseen architect of rock and roll. He wrote the heartbeat of an era, Don't Be Cruel, All Shook Up, Great Balls of Fire. His pen powered Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and an entire generation of sound. Without ever stepping into the spotlight, he shaped the world's biggest stars. But behind the genius was a life slowly collapsing in the shadows. On May 6, 2002, the news broke. Otis Blackwell had died inside a quiet room at Vanderbilt Medical Center in Nashville. The official cause was a massive stroke and heart complications. But the truth is, his death had been coming for more than a decade. Back in 1991, Otis suffered a devastating stroke that paralyzed half his body and stole most of his speech. In an instant, the man who gave the world some of its most explosive music was silenced. He withdrew from public life, living in near total isolation, cut off from the industry that once called him a legend. For the next 10 years, his health continued to crumble. Circulatory problems weakened him. His mobility faded. Speaking became nearly impossible. This once electrifying creative force spent his final years lying in quiet, painful stillness. No stage lights, no applause, no Elvis belting his songs across the world. As time passed, his name dimmed, almost forgotten by the very culture he helped build. When the final stroke hit, Otis slipped into a deep coma and never woke up. No major headlines. No grand tribute. Just a quiet departure for a man whose work had set rock and roll on fire. Many believe that if illness hadn't stolen his voice and mobility, he would have transformed music all over again. But fate, cruel as ever, denied him that second act. Billie Holiday, Lady Day, didn't just sing jazz. She bled it. She turned trauma into poetry, racism into haunting melody, and with songs like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child, she carved her name into eternity. But behind that immortal voice was a life that grew darker, lonelier, and more brutal with every passing year. By July 17, 1959, Billie was a shadow of the legend she had been. Lying in a stark room at Harlem's Metropolitan Hospital, she weighed barely 99 pounds, her once commanding presence reduced to a fragile, trembling frame. She had been admitted with liver failure, heart failure, and labored breathing. Instead of care, she was met with cruelty. Billie Holiday died handcuffed to her hospital bed, guarded by New York City police as if she were a threat, not a dying woman. Officers confiscated her last orders for morphine, denying her even the mercy of pain relief. Loved ones watched helplessly as she gasped for air, fighting not just her failing body, but a system determined to punish her until her final breath. In those final hours, the room meant to save lives became a cage. Death wasn't just an ending. It was the final blow from a world that lifted her high, then discarded her without mercy. Addiction, racism, depression, and a cold, unforgiving legal system crushed her long before her heart finally stopped. Billie Holiday, a woman who once reshaped the world with her voice, died like a criminal, alone, restrained, and betrayed. A truth so raw, it still aches to remember. O'Kelly Isley Jr., one of the pillars of the legendary Isley brothers, died suddenly in the night after a fierce and devastating heart attack. For decades, O'Kelly had been the quiet engine behind the explosion of American soul and funk. As a founding member of the group, he helped craft timeless anthems like Shout, Twist and Shout, and That Lady, songs that shook the nation and reshaped black music forever. His booming voice, commanding stage presence, and unbreakable bond with his brothers made the Isleys untouchable icons of the 60s and 70s. But behind the lights and roaring crowds, O'Kelly carried a silent danger, heart problems he kept hidden from almost everyone. No one knew when it began. He never complained, never slowed down. He just kept working, performing, and carrying the weight of a legacy that demanded everything from him. Then came the night everything collapsed. On March 30, 1986, inside his New Jersey home, O'Kelly felt a crushing pain explode across his chest, like the air had been snatched from his lungs. It hit fast and violently. Sweat poured. His breathing faltered. His family scrambled in panic, rushing him to the hospital as the situation spiraled. The emergency room was chaos, doctors fighting the clock, working frantically to pull him back from the edge. But the attack was too severe. The damage was too deep. Despite every life-saving effort, hope slipped away. In the early hours of March 31st, at just 48 years old, O'Kelly Isley Jr. was pronounced dead. A heart pushed past its limits had finally given out. His passing shattered his family, especially his brothers, who had built their entire lives, their entire identity, alongside him. And with his death, a piece of American music history disappeared too, leaving behind a silence no song could ever fill. Pervis Jackson, the legendary bass voice of the Spinners, met a devastating end in a battle he could never win. For decades, Pervis was the heartbeat of one of America's greatest soul groups. His deep, warm bass grounded classics like Could It Be I'm Falling in Love and Games People Play, giving the Spinners that unmistakable sound fans adored. But in early 2008, everything changed. Pervis received a shattering diagnosis: both liver and pancreatic cancer, two of the most unforgiving diseases known. The news broke the hearts of his family, his group, and everyone who loved him. He fought back with every ounce of strength he had, enduring round after round of brutal chemotherapy and radiation. But the cancer was merciless. Within months, it stripped him of his energy, his weight, and eventually, his ability to stand. He fainted from pain, was rushed to the hospital twice in a single week, and the voice that once shook concert halls grew quiet from sheer exhaustion. By August, his condition collapsed. There was no last-minute miracle, no triumphant comeback. On August 18, 2008, Pervis Jackson took his final breath, peaceful, silent, surrounded by his loved ones and his Spinners family. The man whose booming bass once lifted thousands died a quiet, heartbreaking death after months of unimaginable suffering. He fought with dignity until the very end, but his body simply could not carry him any further. Robert Adam Yancy, the son of Natalie Cole, the grandson of Nat King Cole, a young man born into a legacy so enormous it felt like a crown and a weight at the same time. He grew up in the shadow of giants, yet he chose a quieter lane, writing music, producing, creating from behind the scenes. Talented, gentle, and deeply private, Robert tried to honor the Cole name without being crushed by the comparisons that followed him everywhere. But tragedy found the family again. On August 14, 2017, just 19 months after Natalie Cole's passing, Robert was discovered lifeless in his San Fernando Valley apartment. He was only 39. Earlier that night, he had complained of exhaustion, shortness of breath, and searing chest pain. His family called paramedics immediately. First responders fought for him. CPR, electric shocks, medication, everything they could do. But none of it brought him back. The autopsy stunned everyone. A sudden heart attack. No drugs. No foul play. Just a heart that stopped far too young. And that's when the whispers began. 3 generations of the Cole family gone to heart-related illnesses. Nat King Cole, Natalie Cole, and now Robert Yancy. People called it a curse. Others said it was fate. But for those who loved him, it was simply unbearable. Robert's death wasn't just another headline. It reopened every wound the Cole family had tried to heal. Fans still struggle to accept it. A brilliant life, a cherished son, gone long before his story could unfold. A legacy built on music, a family marked by heartbreak, and a name the world will never forget. Kenny Greene, the R&B genius whose voice could melt a room, fell in one of the most brutal battles the music world has ever witnessed. He was only 32. As the lead voice and creative force behind the iconic group Intro, Kenny didn't just sing songs, he carved memories. His pen gave fans timeless R&B harmonies, heartbreak ballads, and melodies that still echo today. But behind the stage lights, applause, and studio magic, his life was being quietly torn apart by an enemy no one could see. In the early 1990s, Kenny learned he was HIV positive, at a time when the diagnosis felt like a slow-moving death sentence. Medicine was limited, stigma was everywhere, and the fear was suffocating. As the years passed, the disease ravaged his once vibrant body. Kenny grew painfully thin, his immune system collapsing piece by piece. His world became a revolving door of hospital rooms, oxygen masks, and whispered updates from doctors who had run out of options. By October 1, 2001, Kenny lay in a New York hospital bed surrounded by family, friends, and fellow musicians, all in shock, all praying, all powerless. Pneumonia, infections, and relentless pain had drained him to the edge. Some days he could barely open his eyes, barely whisper a word. Loved ones watched as the man who once commanded stages now struggled to breathe. It wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was the story of an entire generation fighting in the shadows. A generation crushed by AIDS long before the world cared enough to listen. Kenny's death wasn't just the loss of a gifted artist, it was a reminder of the thousands who suffered in silence, with little help, little hope, and even less understanding. Kenny Greene's legacy lives in every note he ever sang, beautiful, aching, unforgettable, even as the world failed to save the man behind the music. Sylvester, the fearless disco superstar who lit up the 70s and 80s, burned brighter than almost anyone on stage. With his soaring falsetto, electrifying dance moves, and unapologetically bold fashion, he didn't just perform, he erupted. Every room he walked into became his kingdom. Every spotlight bowed to him. But behind the glitter and glam lived a battle far more brutal than anything the world ever saw. In 1986, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, Sylvester tested HIV positive. Back then, the diagnosis was almost a death sentence. And slowly, the disease that had already taken so many began to dim the fire of one of music's brightest souls. As pneumonia and relentless infections weakened his body, Sylvester made a choice only a true fighter could make. He refused to fade away in a sterile hospital bed. He stayed home in San Francisco, surrounded by the people who loved him, choosing dignity and warmth over cold machines and whispered pity. On December 16, 1988, at just 41 years old, Sylvester took his final breath, leaving behind a silence that still aches in the hearts of fans, friends, and a community that adored him. But even in death, he refused to be defeated. In his will, he left everything he owned to AIDS organizations, demanding that the fight continue long after he was gone. Sylvester didn't just die of a disease. He died fighting for a world that would never let another soul face what he did. And that legacy? It burns brighter than any disco light ever could. Heavy D, rap icon, hitmaker, and one of the most magnetic voices of the 90s, was a force who shaped an entire era. Born Dwight Myers, he wasn't just a rapper or an R&B singer, he was a cultural landmark. His booming voice, his joyful charisma, and his signature sound opened doors for countless artists who came after him. But behind the success, life carried its own quiet storms. On November 8, 2011, Heavy D finished a simple afternoon of shopping in Beverly Hills. Nothing unusual. No warning signs. But moments after he returned to his apartment, everything changed. He suddenly struggled to breathe, collapsing on the walkway as neighbors watched in shock. Paramedics rushed him to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, fighting against time, but the battle was heartbreakingly short. A blood clot in his leg had traveled to his lungs, causing a fatal pulmonary embolism. The attack was swift, silent, and merciless. And just like that, at only 44 years old, Heavy D was gone, leaving unfinished dreams, a grieving family, and millions of fans stunned by the loss of a man whose music had once lit up every room it touched. No one imagined that someone so full of life, energy, and rhythm could be taken by something invisible. His death was a brutal reminder that even legends fall, but the echoes of their voice never fade. Gerald Levert's death wasn't just tragic, it was a heartbreaking collision of pain, exhaustion, and a dangerous mix of medications that no one saw coming. Gerald, the R&B powerhouse whose velvet voice shaped a generation, lived his life under the glow of fame. Hit after hit made him a modern icon of black music, a man whose soul poured through every note. But behind the applause and the spotlight, Gerald carried a quiet burden few ever realized. For years, he battled chronic shoulder pain and relentless insomnia. Days were spent pushing through discomfort. Nights were long, restless wars he tried to win with prescribed pills and over-the-counter medication. It was a routine that felt normal until the night it wasn't. On November 10, 2006, inside his Cleveland, Ohio home, the same place where he once wrote and practiced the songs fans loved, everything went still. Family members found Gerald unresponsive in his bed. Paramedics rushed in, fighting to bring him back, but the clock had already run out. Gerald Levert was gone at just 40 years old. When the autopsy results came back, they stunned the world. A lethal combination of prescription and non-prescription drugs had overwhelmed his system. It was ruled an accidental overdose, a devastating reminder of how easily painkillers, sedatives, and exhaustion can turn fatal when combined. Gerald wasn't reckless. He was tired. He was hurting. And he was trying to keep going. His passing shook the music industry to its core. A blazing talent, a voice that could make the world stop, was silenced by the very medications meant to bring him relief. His story remains a sobering warning, and a tragic chapter in the legacy of a man whose music still lives, even though he never got to finish his journey. LaShawn Daniels didn't just make R&B hits, he shaped the sound of a generation. A genius behind the scenes, his pen crafted the songs that moved millions, and his warm, soulful voice left a fingerprint on American music that still echoes today. But behind the Grammys, the plaques, and the fame was a quiet battle with chronic, grinding pain. On September 4, 2019, inside a South Carolina hospital, that battle took a devastating turn. LaShawn underwent what was supposed to be a routine surgery for chronic back pain, an operation meant to bring relief, not tragedy. But within hours, everything went wrong. Post-surgery complications hit him like a storm. A raging infection spread through his body, attacking multiple organs with terrifying speed. Doctors rushed him into intensive care, fighting to stabilize him, fighting to keep him here. But LaShawn's body, already weakened by years of pain, couldn't withstand the assault. His family stood by, helpless, witnessing the unthinkable. And in the early hours, LaShawn Daniels slipped away, gone far too soon, leaving behind a heartbroken wife and 3 young children who adored him. His death wasn't just a loss. It was a chilling reminder of how fragile life becomes when surgeries go wrong, even the ones meant to heal. One moment of hope can turn into a nightmare that steals someone in an instant. LaShawn's journey ended early, but his music, his voice, and the shock of his sudden passing will haunt and inspire generations to come. Barry White, the velvet-voiced king of R&B, left this world at 58, after fighting a brutal, unforgiving battle that most of his fans never saw. Known for his deep, soothing voice and timeless love songs, Barry wasn't just a music legend, he was a force of nature. His multi-platinum albums, global fame, and cultural influence defined generations. Yet behind the spotlight, he was quietly losing a war his body could no longer withstand. On July 4, 2003, the world froze as news spread that Barry White had died at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. For years, he had lived with chronic high blood pressure, a silent killer that slowly destroyed his health. It pushed his kidneys into failure, robbed him of strength, and forced him into a life-draining routine of dialysis. Diabetes only tightened its grip, weakening him day after day. By 2002, the man who once commanded stages with power and passion now needed machines to keep him alive. His energy faded. His legs swelled. Breathing became a struggle. When he suffered a mild stroke in May 2003, doctors rushed him to the hospital, hoping to buy him time while he waited for a kidney transplant. But his body was breaking faster than they could save him. Every hour felt like borrowed time. His family watched helplessly as the vibrant soul they loved slipped further away. And on that summer morning, after years of silent suffering, Barry White took his final breath, a heartbreaking end to a voice the world thought would last forever. His death is a sobering reminder of how fragile life is, and how even the biggest legends fight battles the world never sees. If this story gave you a deeper glimpse into the hidden struggles behind fame, share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that reveal the truths behind the legends.